And the beautiful part about this story is the blind man saw something that the religious leaders didn't see. He saw Jesus for who he really was. And today we get to look at this miraculous story, not just as a story, but as a wake-up call, where we get to decide, are we seeing Jesus clearly? Are we allowing the vision of who he is to change who we are? However, we do realize he has work for us to do. It's not work we do to gain his favor. It's work we do because we've received his favor. It's work we do because God has called us to live differently as children of God. And so we are constantly looking for ways to live out the tasks that God has put in front of us, because we want to honor him. We want our lives to reflect his goodness. We want his light to shine through us and through the works that we're doing. In another place, Jesus says, do these good works so that your light will shine before men, that they may see the good works and glorify our Father who is in heaven. And so we have this visionary work that we are called to do. Everyone's called to do something different. Everyone has a different task. I love my task. I love being up here getting the opportunity to take and discern God's word and to try to give you what God has been speaking to me. I know if I were to ask certain of you to come up here and do it, you would be terrified. That you'd be like, that's not my gifting, and that's okay. Some of you, you might just be someone who gets to smile at the front door and shake a few hands. You might be someone who is really good at cleaning. You might be someone who can bring a different task. You might be someone who's really good at bringing a hot meal to someone who's going through a difficult season. All of us have tasks to do. All of us have ways to show the love of God to the world around us. And we have to constantly be asking Jesus, what do you have for me to do right now? What's the task you've put in front of me? I want to honor you. I want to honor what you're doing in me in this moment. And I want to reflect your goodness through the work you've given me to do. What really got people angry was the fact that once they started asking him questions, when did this happen? How did this happen? It became evident that Jesus healed him on the Sabbath, the Jewish holy day. And this is not the first time Jesus is healed on the Sabbath, and all of a sudden, everyone's angry. All of a sudden, it has nothing to do with how wonderful this man has experienced freedom, how wonderful this man who had been born blind now has sight. It's about, how terrible that this miracle worker would do this on a holy day. This is probably the scariest part of John chapter 9. Because he's pointing out that there are people who think they understand who God is. They think they can see God clearly, but they're actually blind. You have to figure out for yourself, am I seeing Jesus clearly? And I think if any of us are honest, all of us will recognize we're not seeing him as clearly as we should. Whether we're following him, whether we know him, whether we have been someone who's just come into the faith, or whether we're someone who may be asleep to it, all of us could see him more clearly. And my hope through this entire series is that we would recognize there's places where we're not seeing him clearly, and we would turn to him and say, help me to see, heal my blindness, forgive me for the ways in which I've allowed my own thoughts, my own desires, my own conditioning to blind me from the truth of who you are. Because as he's saying here, as long as we think we can see, we actually are putting ourselves in a place where we potentially are blind to our own inadequacies, our own ways in which Jesus is asking us to be healed. I've been around Christianity long enough to realize you can get people to argue with you about every aspect of Christianity. You can get people angry on any position you hold about who Jesus is. You can spend hours, you can spend lifetimes debating people about what is the best way to worship, what is the best version of the Bible to read? What is the best denomination? What is the best this, that, or the other? This guy basically says, I don't know about any of that. But this I know. I was blind, and now I see. Can I help you to understand this? People can argue with you about doctrine. They can argue with you about denominations. They can argue with you about all these other things. What they can't argue with is your own testimony. They can't argue with you about what you have experienced. The one thing that you have, the one superpower, if it would be, if I can say that you have, is your own testimony. You have the ability to say, this is what Jesus has done for me. Or at least I hope you have that. If you don't have that, let's get that right today. Let's let you reach out to Jesus today and experience His love, experience His grace. But all of us have the ability, hopefully, if you know Jesus for any length of time, that you can speak. I don't know about all this other stuff that you want to argue about, but this is what I know. I know what Jesus did for me. I know how He changed me. I know what He did to draw me to Himself. I've experienced this thing. I mean, I've talked with some of you, and I've heard about the miracles God has done in your life. I've heard about the different ways in which God spoke to you. God, directed you in different things. That's a part of your testimony. And one of the things that we're called to do, while it's still light, while the night has not yet come, we are called to tell more people about the stories that Jesus has poured into our lives. We are called to be people who go out and say, I was once blind, but now I see. I was once dead, but now I'm alive. I was once stuck in depression, but now I have joy. I was once alone, but now I am in a family of people who are following Jesus. We all have these stories, and we need to find ways to let people know. We need to find ways of expressing this good news, because this is what we're called to do. And what I really believe is the more we do this, the more of His light gets revealed in us. The more we share His good news with other people, the more we proclaim what He's done in our lives, the more He wants to do more. The more because He knows we're going to be faithful stewards of the goodness of God's light in our lives. I was blind, and now I can see. How powerful would it be if sometime this week you shared something like that with someone else? Now, I don't know about all this crazy stuff. I don't know about, things that are happening in the world of politics. I don't know about geopolitical problems that are going on. And, there's lots of people, they've got lots of opinions. Just ask them. But that could be a segue of just, hey, what do you think about what's going on in the world? Yeah, that's kind of crazy. I agree. And I don't really have much to say about all this, but this I know. I used to be blind, but now I can see. I used to be consumed with worry about how the world's going to end. But now I have a hope. Find your story and share it. Be a visionary witness for Jesus. That you can tell others, this is what God has done for me. That's my prayer for us today. That we could be a people who stand under the authority of God with confidence that we have something worth sharing. We have the best news. We have the best news. We need to take it to the world around us.